pounds on me, so I got that fire on me. In the desert heat, I'm burning marijuana, trying to fill bags with green and blue cheese. In the city, the only thing that matters is the money, and that's the only thing I want, honey. I live the life that's crummy, so I want my gold like a day sunny. Once upon a time.
Alright, this is the Mitra Blue episode series, and I'm Bird Rabbit. For today, we are going to be reading the first chapter of Mr. Frederick Douglass, the narrative of it, his life. We read the preface, so we're going to do the chapter and see how long we can do it. I should get some water. I do be parched reading this shit. But let's get started. And yeah. Alright. I was born in Tuckahoe near Hillsborough, and about 12 miles eastern in Talbot County, Maryland. I have no accurate knowledge of my age, never have seen my authentic record containing it. By far the larger part of the slaves know as little as their ages as horses know of theirs. And it's the wish of most matters within my knowledge to keep their slave thus ignorant. I do not remember to have ever met a slave who could tell his birthday. They seldom come nearer to it than planting time, harvest time, cherry time, springtime, or fall time. A want of information concerning my own was a source of unhappiness to me even during childhood. The white children could tell their ages. I could not tell why I ought to be deprived of the same privilege. I was not allowed to make any inquiries of my masters concerning it. He deemed all such inquiries on the part of a slave improper and impertinent, and evidence of a restless spirit. The nearest estimate I can give makes me now between 27 and 28 years of age. I come to this from hearing my master say sometime during 1835. I was about 17 years old. My mother was named Harriet Bailey. She was a daughter of Isaac and Betsy Bailey, both colored and quite dark. My mother was a darker complexion than either my grandmother or grandfather. My father was a white man. He was admitted to be such by all I have ever speak to my parentage. The opinion was also whispered that my master was my father. But of that correctness of this opinion, I know nothing. The means of nothing was withheld from me. My mother and I were separated when I was but an infant. Before I knew her as my mother, it was a common custom in part of Maryland from which I ran away to part children from their mothers at a very early age. Frequently before the child has reached its 12th month, its mother is taken from it and hired out on some farm a considerable distance off, and the child is placed under the care of an old woman too old for field labor. For what this separation is done, I do not know, unless it is to hinder the development of the child's affection towards its mother, and to blunt and destroy the natural affection of the mother for the child. This is inevitable result. I never saw my mother. To know her as much, more than four times in my life, and each of these times as very short in duration and at night. She was hired by a Mr. Stewart, who lived about 12 miles from my home. She made her journey to see me in the night, traveling the whole distance on foot after the performance of her day's work. She was a field hand, and a whipping is the and a whipping is the penalty of not being in the field at sunrise unless a slave has a special permission from his or her master to contrary, a permission which they seldom get, and one that gives it the proud name of being a kind master. I do not recollect of ever seeing my mother by the light of day. She was with me in the night. She would lie down with me and get me to sleep, but long before I wake she was gone. Very little communication ever took place between us. Death soon ended what little we could have while she lived, and with it her hardship and suffering. She died when I was about 7 years old. On one of my master's farm near Lee's Mill, I was not allowed to be present during her illness. At her death or burial, she was gone long before I knew anything about it, never having enjoyed to any considerable extent her soothing presence. Of her tender and watchful care, I received the tidings of her death with much the same emotions I should have probably felt at the death of a stranger. Called thus suddenly away, she left me without the slightest intimation of who my father was. The whisper that my master was my father may or may not be true, and true or false, it is of the little consequence to my purpose, whilst the fact remains in all glaring audientness that slaveholder have ordained and by law established that the children of the slave women shall in cases follow the conditions of their mothers, and this is done to obviously to administer to their own lusts and make a gratification of their wicked desires profitable as well as pleasurable. For by this cunning arrangement the slaveholder in cases not a few sustained to his slaves the double relations of master and father. I know such of cases, and it's worthy of remark that such slaves invariably suffer greater hardships and have more to content with than others. They are in first place in constant offense to their mistress. She is ever disposed to find fault with them. They can seldom do anything to please her. She is never better pleased than when she sees them under the lash, especially when she suspects her husband of showing to his mulatto children favors which he withholds from his black slaves. The master is frequently compelled to sell this class of slaves. Class of his slaves, out of deference to the feeling of his white wife, and cruel, and as the deed may strike anyone to be far a man to sell his own children to human flesh mongers, it is often the dictate of humanity for him to do so. It's often the dictate. Let's read that over. The master is frequently compelled to sell this class of his slaves. Let's read that one over. They are in first place, constant offense to their mistress. To their mistress. She is ever disposed to find fault with them. they can seldom do anything to please her. She is never better pleased than when she sees them under the lash, especially when she suspects her husband of showing to his mulatto children favors which he withhold from his black slaves. The master is frequently compelled to sell this class of his slaves out in deference to the feeling of his white wife, and cruel as the deed may strike anyone to be far a man to sell his own children to human fleshmongers, it is often the dictate of humanity for him to do so. For, unless he does this, he must not only whip them himself, but must stand by and see one white son tie up his brother of but few shades darker complexion than himself, and ply the glory lash to his naked back. And if he lisps one word of disapproval, it is set down to his parental partiality, and only makes a bad matter worse, both for himself and the slave whom he would protect and defend. Every year brings with it multitudes of this class of slaves. It was doubtless in consequence of the knowledge of this fact that one great statesman of the South predicted the downfall of slavery by the inevitable law of population. Whether this prophecy is ever fulfilled or not, it is nevertheless plain that a very different looking class of people are springing up at the South, and are now held in slavery from those originally brought to this country from Africa. And if their increase will do no other good, it will do away the force of the argument that God cursed Ham, and therefore American slavery is right. If the linemen descendants of Ham are alone to be scripturally enslaved, it is certain that slavery at the South must soon become unscriptural. For thousands are ushered into the world annually who, like myself, owe their existence to white fathers, and those fathers most frequently their own masters. I have two masters. My first master name was Anthony. I do not remember his first name. I was generally called Captain Anthony, a title which I presume he acquired by sailing. He was actually generally called Captain Anthony, a title which I presume he acquired by sailing a craft on Chesapeake Bay. He was not considered a rich slaveholder. He owned 2 or 3 farms and about 30 slaves. His farms and slaves were under the care of an overseer. The overseer name was Plummer. Mr. Plummer was a miserable, drunken, and profane swearer, a savage monster. He was always went armed with cowskin and a heavy cudgel. I have known him to cut a slash the woman's head so horribly that even master would be enraged at his cruelty, and would threaten to whip him if he did not mind himself. Master, however, was not a humane slaveholder. It was required extraordinary barbarity on the part of an overseer to affect him. He was a cruel man hardened by a long life of slaveholding. He would at times seem to take great pleasure in whipping a slave. I have often been awakened at the dawn of day by the most heart-rending shrieks of an own aunt of mine, whom he was tie up to a joist and whip upon her naked back till she was literally covered with blood. No words, no tears, no prayers from his glory victim to seem to move his iron heart from its bloody purpose. The louder she screamed, the harder he whipped, and where the blood ran fastest, there where he whipped the longest. He would whip her to make her scream and whip to make her hush, and not until overcome fatigue would he cease to swing the blood-clotted cowskin. I remember the first time I ever witnessed this horrible exhibition. I was a quiet child, but well remembered it. I never shall forget the whilst I remember anything. I was the first of a long series such outrages of which I was doomed to be witness and participant. It struck me as an awful force. It was the blood-stained gates. It struck me with an awful force. It was the blood-stained gate, the entrance to hell of slavery through which I was about to pass. It was the most terrible spectacle. I wish I could commit to paper the feeling with which I beheld it. This occurrence took place very soon after I went to live with my old master, and under the following circumstance. Aunt Hester went out one night where are for what's to do not now, and happened to be absent when my master desired her presence. He had ordered her not to go out evenings and warned her that she must never let him catch her in company with a young man who was paying attention to her, belonging to Colonel Lloyd. The young man's name was Ned's Robert, generally called Lloyd's Ned. Why master was so carefully of her may be safely let to conjecture. She was a woman of noble form and of graceful proportion, having very few equals, and very inferior superiors in personal appearance among the colored or white women of our neighborhood. Aunt Hester had not only disobeyed by his orders in going out, but had been found in company with Lloyd's Ned, which circumstance I found from what he said while whipping her was the chief offense. Had been man of pure morals himself, he might have been thought interested in protecting the innocent of my aunt, but those who knew him will not suspect him of any such virtue. Before he commenced whipping Aunt Hester, he took her into the kitchen and stripped her from the neck to waist, leaving her neck, shoulders, and back entirely naked. He then told her to cross her hands, calling her at times Let's edit it out. I don't know. After crossing her hands, he tried them with a strong rope and led her to a stool under a large hook. In this joist, by her for purpose, he made her get upon the stool and tied her hands to a hook. She now stood fair for his infernal purpose. Her arms were stretched up at their full length, so that she stood upon the ends of her toes. He then said to her, "Now, you..." Edit it out. I don't know what it is. I know this one's probably bitch. Maybe. I don't know what this DD means. I don't know. I'll learn you how to disobey my orders. Yeah, well, let me show you. I mean, I don't know if you probably can't. But fuck it. It's edited out. It's censored out. Anyway, I'll learn you now to disobey my orders. And after rolling up his sleeve, he commenced to lay the heavy cowskin and sewn the warm red blood, amid rendering shrieks from her and horrid oaths from him came dripping to the floor. I was terrified and horror-stricken at the sight, that I hid myself in the closet and dared not to venture out till long after the bloody transaction was over. I expected it would be my turn next. It was all new to me. I'd never seen anything like it before. I had always lived with my grandmother on the outskirts of the plantation, where she was about to raise the children of the younger woman I had therefore been until now out the way of the bloody scenes that often occurred on that plantation. Chapter 2. And we're going to stop there. Wow. That was very enjoyable. Very graphic. But anywho, I enjoyed that book read. That chapter was very graphic. Learned a lot about how they treated mulatto children. How do the white wives treat the mulatto children? And yeah, so it was interesting. Then we'll dive on the next chapter, the second chapter, and probably the next series episode. So we'll get to it. Thank you.